I used to think there was a kind of peace in predictability. That if you could count on the rhythm of someone's voice, the small routines in your days together, then you could trust that what you had was real. But all it takes is one night, one offhand lie dressed as a plan for the whole rhythm to fall apart. Julia told me she was going to Scottsdale for the weekend. Bachelorette thing. Her colleague Erin, one of those office friends she always said she only tolerated, was apparently getting married and a few coworkers planned a getaway. I didn't ask questions. Why would I? 10 years of marriage had trained me to take her words at face value. She left that Friday afternoon with a small suitcase and a quick kiss on the cheek. Her tone was upbeat, her hug a little distracted. But I chalked it up to nerves. We had just moved to Arizona 6 weeks earlier, staying in a furnished rental while we figured out where to plant roots. The house was quiet, too quiet most days. I figured a weekend with her work friends would be good for her. I spent the evening catching up on emails, reheating leftover pasta, and half-watching a documentary I'd already seen. Around 10, I shut everything down and went out back. The air was cooler than usual, the desert breeze settling in for the night. I stood barefoot on the patio looking out at the sparse yard and the neighbor's porch lights in the distance. I wasn't worried. Not really. But something felt off. At 11:37 p.m. I heard tires on gravel. I turned toward the front window. A car, black or maybe dark blue, eased up to the curb like it was trying not to be noticed. The engine stayed running. I watched as a tall man in a dark shirt stepped out. He moved with the kind of confidence that doesn't belong to a cab driver or an Uber guy. He walked to the passenger side and opened the door. Julia stepped out. She was laughing. Her dress was one of the few I remembered buying with her, something elegant and low-cut she hadn't worn in years. She adjusted the strap casually and turned to him. He said something, I couldn't hear it, but she smiled. The smile wasn't polite or reserved. It was soft. Familiar. Then they hugged. It lasted too long. He had his hand at her lower back. She didn't push him away. She leaned into it. That's when my chest got tight. Not from anger. Not even jealousy. It was disbelief, like watching someone you thought you knew speak a language you've never heard before. I didn't move. I didn't make a sound. I watched as she picked up her bag from the back seat. No suitcase. Just a purse and a small tote. She came inside like nothing happened. The front door creaked a little as it always did, but she didn't call out. Didn't say, hey babe, or I'm back. She walked past the kitchen without looking over, her heels making that careful, familiar sound on the tile floor. She smelled like hotel soap and a man's cologne I didn't recognize, sandalwood or cedar, not the floral scent she usually wore. She paused at the guest room door. I thought she'd turn. She didn't. She slipped inside and shut it quietly behind her. No explanation. No attempt at pretending. Just gone. I sat at the kitchen table with a glass of water in my hand and stared at the place where she had just walked by. My mind was a carousel of things I could say, should say, but I didn't move. I didn't ask her anything. I didn't accuse her. I didn't even breathe too loudly. Instead, I sat there until the ice in my glass melted and the clock struck midnight. I tried to tell myself there could be another reason. That maybe she had carpooled back with someone and the hug was friendly. That the cologne was from the seat of the car. That the silence meant nothing. But something inside me, something ancient and quiet, told me the truth didn't need my permission to exist. I had always trusted Julia. I believed in her. In us. But that night, sitting in that dim kitchen, I realized the most dangerous lies don't come from other people. They come from the stories we tell ourselves to keep from drowning. The next morning, I heard her in the kitchen before I even opened my eyes. The smell of coffee drifted down the hall, and for a second, I forgot everything. It felt like every other Saturday. Like nothing had changed. But when I sat up, I noticed something strange. Her suitcase, the one she'd left with, was still in the hallway. Untouched. No weekend bag. No shoes kicked off near the door. It hit me all over again. She never went to Scottsdale. I stayed in the bedroom longer than I needed to, listening. She moved around quietly, probably thinking I was still asleep. When I finally emerged, she was pouring coffee, dressed in yoga pants and a sweatshirt like it was just another lazy morning. She looked at me like she always had. But it didn't land the same. Morning, she said, handing me a mug. Morning, I echoed, taking it without smiling. I wanted to ask where she'd really been. I wanted to say, who was he? But I didn't. Instead, I drank the coffee and watched her from across the table. The hum of the refrigerator loud between us. She talked about errands and grocery lists, about how the Wi-Fi still needed fixing, and that we should look at houses next weekend. I nodded where appropriate. I said nothing of what I'd seen. I let her lie to me, because sometimes Confronting the truth means you have to face who you've become in the process. And at that moment, I wasn't ready to know who that was. I didn't bring it up. Not that day or the day after. I went through the motions, fixing the broken Wi-Fi, cleaning out the garage, making small talk about what part of town we might want to buy in. Julia played her role effortlessly. But something between us had cracked, silently and invisibly, and the more we ignored it, the deeper it spread. That Sunday morning, she went out for coffee and came back with 2 lattes. She handed me mine like she always did, careful with the lid because she knew I hated it when it leaked. That kind of detail used to warm me. Now it felt rehearsed. She sat across from me, scrolling through her phone, and I realized I hadn't seen her unlock it in weeks. I used to know her passcode. Now, when the screen lit up, it was just a sea of notifications with no previews, just the word message and a timestamp. She never turned the screen toward me anymore. That would have been nothing once. Now it felt like everything. I didn't snoop. Not yet. I didn't want to be that guy, the paranoid husband looking for ghosts in text logs. But things started adding up. Quietly, relentlessly. Tuesday night, she said she had a late meeting. Some project kickoff at the office that might run long. I offered to pick her up. She said no. You'd be waiting around forever. When she finally walked in at nearly 11:30, she was in different clothes than she'd left in. She said she spilled coffee on herself, that she ran to Target for a backup. There was no coffee smell, just that same cologne. Not mine. The next Friday, she laughed at something on her phone in the driveway before coming inside. Her car window was still down. I watched from the living room. She was smiling, not her polite office face kind of smile, but the kind she used to give me. It faded the second she saw me through the window. She turned the phone over and came inside like it hadn't happened. I asked, "Good day." She said, "Productive," and changed the subject before I could ask more. Kept happening, these little things that, alone, might have meant nothing. But together, they formed a picture I didn't want to look at. She started working late every Friday. Started keeping her phone face down on the nightstand. Started locking the bathroom door. Started saying she was just tired when I reached for her in bed. I remembered a trip we'd taken to Los Angeles just before the move. It was supposed to be one last getaway before Arizona. Just the 2 of us, beaches, late dinners, laughter. But Julia had been distant the whole time. Distracted. She spent more time on her phone than talking to me. Said she was nervous about the new job. I believed her. Now I wasn't so sure. I began noticing how much of our life I had stopped questioning. Like how she changed the passwords on her laptop. She said it was IT policy at work. Or how she always showered the second she got home on certain nights. Or how she once told me to stop being weird when I asked why she wasn't wearing her wedding ring. That used to feel like nothing. Now it felt like a blueprint I had ignored. And then there were the smells. Subtle. Telling. The scent of unfamiliar cologne on her clothes when she tossed them in the laundry. Once, I found a receipt in her coat pocket. 2 cocktails at a hotel bar she never mentioned visiting. The date matched one of those late nights. I didn't say anything. Not yet. Instead, I tested her. I told her I was going out of town for a day, a made-up work obligation. She didn't question it. Didn't seem disappointed. Just asked, "When will you be back?" When I said, "Late tomorrow," she smiled and kissed me on the cheek. No hesitation. I canceled the hotel I hadn't booked and spent the night at a friend's place across town. Texting her good night like I usually would. Her reply was instant, filled with hearts and "miss you already" sentiments. The words landed hollow. That night I didn't sleep, because now I was remembering all the signs that had come and gone over the years. Things I brushed aside, called coincidences, made excuses for. Like how she once flinched when I picked up her phone by mistake. Or how she had a second email account for newsletters she never let me see. Or how she suddenly needed solo time on Sundays to reset for the week. I thought back to a conversation we'd had years ago, before we were married. We were on a weekend trip in Oregon, drinking wine by a fireplace in a cheap but cozy Airbnb. We'd been talking about fidelity, half drunk, half joking. I asked, "Do you think you'd ever cheat?" She laughed, leaned into me, and said, "No. But if I ever did, you'd never know." At the time, I thought it was clever. Charming, even. The way she said it, so confident. Now, it echoed in my mind like a warning I'd laughed off. It's a strange thing, realizing you might be losing someone while they're still sitting across the room from you. Still pouring your coffee, still texting you I love you, still brushing their teeth next to you. It's like waking up in a house you no longer recognize even though you helped build it. I stopped sleeping through the night. Every creak of the floor, every flicker of her phone screen woke me up. I'd listen for signs, scroll through imaginary possibilities in my head, play out conversations I never actually had the guts to start. She asked me once why I seemed so tired lately. I said I was just adjusting to the dry air. She believed me. Just like I'd believed her. For now, I watched. Waited. I didn't have proof, not yet. But the suspicion had taken root, and when suspicion blooms, it doesn't go quietly. It stretches into every moment, reshaping every memory, every gesture. It makes you second-guess smiles, question silences, read between every line of casual conversation. And still, I told myself maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was overthinking it. Maybe there was a simple explanation for all of it, one that didn't end in betrayal. But that hope, thin and stubborn, was starting to rot from the inside out. Because every lie you let slide becomes permission for the next. And I was starting to see that the version of Julia I had married might have been fading for longer than I wanted to admit. 3 nights after that man in the dark shirt dropped her off, the same man whose name I still didn't know, Julia told me she was going out again. Just drinks with the girls, she said casually, tugging on a black dress she hadn't worn in months. She didn't ask if I minded. She didn't ask if I wanted to come. She just said it like a formality, like informing a roommate that the light bill was due. I nodded, watching her from the hallway. She stood at the mirror adjusting her hair, focused, meticulous. Her phone buzzed twice on the counter and she turned the screen face down before slipping it into her bag. "Where are you all meeting?" I asked, trying not to sound like I was prying. She paused for half a second too long. "Downtown. That bar Aaron likes. The one with the fireplace." "Ah, right?" She smiled, kissed my cheek, and walked out the door, the scent of perfume and nerves trailing behind her. I didn't stop her. I didn't ask more questions. I didn't accuse her, cry, or beg. Instead, I waited for the sound of the car pulling away. Then I walked into the living room, sat down at my laptop, and opened the folder labeled House Security. Weeks earlier, right after the move, I installed a discreet security camera above the front entry. Julia had teased me about it, said I was being paranoid about porch pirates, but I brushed it off as a standard precaution. She never mentioned it again. And apparently she never noticed it either. I clicked through the timestamps, fast-forwarding through the dull hum of uneventful footage. I stopped at the previous Friday night, her supposed bachelorette trip return. There it was again, the same car pulling into our driveway, headlights dimmed. Same man in the dark shirt, the same casual confidence. He stepped out, walked around, opened the door. Julia got out just like before. But this time I watched frame by frame. She didn't just hug him. He kissed her. Not a quick goodbye or a friendly peck. A real kiss, lingering, familiar. She placed her hand on his chest, leaned into him for just a moment. Then she stepped back, gave him one last smile, and walked inside. Alone. I sat there staring at the screen long after the clip ended. There was no explaining that away. No, it's not what it looks like. No, friend from work or just catching up. That kiss was not accidental. That was an asterisk Macy. Familiarity. That was a woman who wasn't conflicted. That was a woman who had already crossed the line. I sat in the dark for a long time, staring at the still frame on the monitor. Her face, softly lit by the porch light, eyes closed, a quiet smile after the kiss. That moment broke something in me. Not in the violent, explosive way you expect when betrayal hits. Not like a car crash or a thunderclap. No. This was quieter. Slower. Like the sound of a door locking from the other side. Later that night, when she returned home, nearly 2 a.m., she slipped off her shoes and stood by the doorway. I was still at the table, pretending to read a book. She looked surprised to see me still awake. "Didn't think you'd wait up?" she said softly, her tone off by just a shade. "I couldn't sleep," I replied. She walked past me, trailing perfume and bar smoke. Her eyes looked red, like she'd been crying. She poured herself a glass of water but barely touched it. "You okay?" I asked. She nodded too quickly. "Yeah, just tired. Long night." I said nothing. Didn't call her out. Didn't ask about the man. Didn't mention the footage. Because something had shifted. My instinct to protect, to fix, to chase after clarity, it was gone. She wasn't crying because of guilt. She was crying because she had to return to the lie. She went straight to the guest room again. The door clicked shut behind her, and I just sat there, heart quiet, mind racing. I didn't sleep, couldn't. That next morning, she acted like everything was normal. She made eggs. She brought up mortgage rates like she hadn't shattered the foundation we stood on. I watched her perform normalcy, watched her eyes dart to her phone every few minutes, watched her check the front window when she thought I wasn't looking. But I didn't say a word. I just kept collecting the pieces. I started saving the footage, backing it up, organizing dates. I found another clip from 2 weeks earlier. Same car, different time, early afternoon. She had told me she was getting lunch with an old college friend. She left in jeans and a t-shirt. She returned in different clothes, heels, hair tousled. In the footage, he kissed her hand before she stepped inside. It was sickeningly gentle, almost romantic. And she smiled like it was the most natural thing in the world. I copied it to a flash drive. Not out of revenge. Out of preservation. Proof of reality in case I ever started doubting myself again. And then there were the texts. She had left her tablet open one afternoon while she showered. She never used it much, mostly for books and the occasional recipe. But her messages synced across devices. She must have forgotten. There were only a few exchanges. Most of them were deleted, but some survived in backup folders. Screensh *ts. Snippets. Him. Last night was perfect. You're still in my head. Her. You shouldn't say that. But I feel the same. Him. When are you gonna stop pretending? Her. It's not that simple. Simple. That word echoed in my mind. Like this wasn't her life she was detonating. She had chosen him. Chosen this. And yet, she was still here. Walking our dog. Filling the fridge with almond milk. Pretending our life hadn't gone hollow. I printed the messages. Not to confront her with. Not yet. Just to have them. Just so I wouldn't forget. Because the worst part of being betrayed isn't the betrayal. It's the silence that follows. It's the pretending. It's watching someone you love lie to your face with the same mouth they used to say, forever. And you start to wonder if they ever meant it. If any of it was real. I began pulling away. Quietly. Not with fights or ultimatums. Just less. I stopped initiating conversations. I stopped waiting for her when she was late. I stopped kissing her goodnight. My silence wasn't punishment. It was a funeral. I buried every part of me that used to trust her. And in its place, I began to rebuild. Small things. I took long walks alone. Started journaling again. Resumed calls with my brother. The ones I used to cancel when she said she wanted a no-phone evening. I sat in my car for an hour after work sometimes, just listening to music I liked. The kind she said was too moody for dinner playlists. I started to reclaim space. Started to reclaim me. I didn't confront her. Because I didn't need to. I had my proof. I had the truth. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't need her version of it. I didn't rage. I didn't scream or slam doors. There were no confrontations, no demands for answers she'd just twist anyway. Instead, I withdrew like water pulling from the shore. Slowly, silently, leaving behind only the outline of what once was. That version of me. The one who stayed up late waiting for her to come home, who made excuses for every red flag, who clung to hope like it was oxygen. He died quietly the night I watched her kiss another man. I woke the next morning and made breakfast for one. Julia slept in the guest room again, claiming she'd been tossing and turning, and didn't want to wake me. I didn't ask why she'd been crying. I didn't ask who she'd really been with. I just nodded, poured my coffee, and said, "Thanks." That was the beginning of my quiet exodus. I started leaving the house early, before she was awake, before she could make casual conversation or ask if I wanted anything from the store. I told her I was working longer hours, helping the new office settle in. It wasn't a lie exactly. I was staying out longer, but not at work. I found a woodworking class posted on a community board at a local cafe. I signed up without telling her. Once a week, I sat in a dusty workshop with strangers and learned how to strip old furniture down to its bare, broken parts and give it purpose again. It felt symbolic, therapeutic. I rented a small studio space nearby, barely more than a garage, but it was mine. I filled it with tools, reclaimed wood, and silence. It was the first place I'd walked into in months that didn't smell like her perfume or carry the weight of her lies. I started running again too. Not because I had a goal or was chasing a version of myself from before, but because it felt good to be in motion. To feel my lungs burn and my heart race for reasons that had nothing to do with suspicion or heartache. I stopped eating dinner with her. She'd leave plates on the table, salmon, roasted vegetables, sometimes my favorite pasta. She never asked why I didn't eat. She just packed up the leftovers quietly and placed them in the fridge, like we were roommates in a house built from ashes. She left hints, of course. Slips of manipulation disguised as care. A note once, missed you last night. Hope you're okay. A voice message another time, made your favorite. Hope work isn't too much. But it was too late for those things. Too late for feigned concern. She wasn't worried about me. She was worried about control. And I had taken mine back. She started getting sloppy. Maybe she thought I wasn't watching anymore. Or maybe she just didn't care. I found another receipt, this one for a boutique hotel spa. 2 glasses of champagne. A couple's package. She left it on the kitchen counter like it wasn't soaked in implication. Her laundry came back with scents I didn't recognize. Not just his cologne, though that was still there sometimes, but strange traces of perfume I knew she didn't own. Maybe his. Maybe someone else's. The point was, she stopped hiding it. Or maybe she thought I'd already given up. And in a way, I had. But not in the way she hoped. I hadn't given up like a man defeated. I'd given up like a man finally awake. Awake to how long I'd carried something that wasn't love anymore. Awake to how much of myself I'd bent and reshaped trying to fit into the mold of a marriage that had stopped holding shape. I didn't tell anyone at first. Not my brother. Not my best friend back home. Not my coworkers who asked if I was okay after I missed 3 happy hours in a row. I wasn't ready to say it out loud. Because saying it made it final. And strangely, I didn't need that yet. I just needed space. So I created it. Every day, I took one more step away from the life we built. I unsubscribed from joint grocery list apps. Changed my passwords. Left the wedding photo that used to sit on my desk in a drawer I didn't open anymore. I didn't block her. Didn't erase our digital history or remove tags. I didn't want to erase the past. I just didn't want to live in it. I started reading again. Real books with paper and weight. I reread the things they carried, and something about the quiet, internal burden of it hit me harder this time. It was about war, yes, but it was also about what we choose to carry long after the war is done. I realized I'd been carrying her. And she hadn't noticed. I reconnected with Ben, my best friend from college, who I hadn't seen in almost 2 years. We grabbed beers at a small brewery and talked about everything except Julia until he finally asked, "You two doing okay?" I looked him in the eye and said, "Not really." And that was the first time I said it out loud. He didn't ask for details. Just nodded slowly and said, "Whatever you need, man." Seriously. It was the first time in months someone had said something to me that didn't feel rehearsed. That night, I went back to the studio and just sat there for an hour. No music. No lights. Just me, the creak of the stool, and the smell of sawdust. It felt like church. The next day, she tried again. She wore the blue dress, the one she knew I liked, and made breakfast, complete with fresh orange juice and avocado toast the way I used to eat it. I walked past her in silence, grabbed a banana, and left without a word. She called after me, something about needing to talk. I didn't turn around. Because talking was what got us here. And silence was what was setting me free. That night, she texted, "Can we just have dinner together? Like before? I'll cook, you pick the movie." I read it. Didn't reply. I wasn't punishing her. I just had nothing left to say. I began making things in the studio. Not furniture, not yet, just small things. A bookend. A planter box. A stool with imperfect legs. But each creation felt like proof. Proof that I could still build something. That I still had purpose. That my hands still worked when they weren't holding on too tightly to someone who didn't want to be held. One evening, I sat at a park bench near our house, sipping gas station coffee. I watched the sun dip behind the trees and realized it was the first time in years I had spent time with myself without trying to be anything for anyone else. I didn't feel sad. I felt still. And that was something. Julia came home late that night. Said she was at the gym, but I'd driven past it an hour earlier and hadn't seen her car. She looked tired. Worn in a way that had nothing to do with exercise. She opened the fridge, saw the takeout box with my name on it, and said, "Didn't feel like dinner?" "No," I said flatly. "Oh," she said. Then quietly, "Okay?" She didn't ask what was wrong. Because she knew. She knew the space between us was no longer about a single lie or even a string of them. It was about the realization that I had stopped chasing her, that I wasn't playing the part anymore, that I wasn't angry or broken or even waiting. I was gone. Emotionally, mentally, spiritually, still in the house, but not in the life. And that, I think, scared her more than any confrontation ever could. Because people expect anger, but they don't know what to do with peace. I think Julia expected a reaction eventually. Not right away. She was smart enough to sense the shift when it started, but prideful enough to believe it was temporary. That I'd snap out of it. That I'd crack and ask the question I was supposed to ask. Why? But I didn't. And the silence between us wasn't passive. It was absolute. At first, she tested the waters with sarcasm, her go-to defense when she felt control slipping. One morning, after I walked past her without saying anything, she muttered just loud enough for me to hear, "Should I book a session with a medium, or are you planning to haunt me forever?" I didn't flinch. She laughed under her breath like it was a joke. It wasn't. Later that same week, she cooked my favorite meal, a chicken piccata with rosemary potatoes, the way her mother used to make it. She set the table like she had during our early years, 2 glasses of wine, candles, the playlist we used to put on during long dinners when we still cared to talk. I walked in, saw it all, and kept walking. A simple "I already ate" was all I gave her. She sat alone that night, eating quietly while the candle burned too fast and the wine turned sour in its glass. The next attempt came in the form of nostalgia. She found an old photo of us from a trip to San Francisco. We were standing in front of the painted ladies, arms wrapped around each other, wind in our faces. I remember that day. The cold. The way she'd slipped her hand into mine in that absent-minded way people do when they feel safe. She left the photo on my nightstand. I found it the next morning. I turned it face down. She didn't bring it up, but I noticed she stopped leaving little things after that. The manipulation evolved. She tried conversation, thinly disguised as curiosity. "How's work?" she asked one evening, peeking her head into the studio. "Fine. You're always out here. What are you working on?" "Nothing for you." She blinked. "Okay," she said, trying to keep it light. "Let me know if you ever want to show me." She lingered, waiting for a bridge that wasn't coming. Then left. I heard her sigh down the hall like the house itself was weighing her down. There was a desperation building in her, subtle at first. She tried accidental closeness, reaching across me for something in the kitchen she didn't need, brushing against my arm with a practiced softness. Dropping her towel in the laundry when I happened to be nearby. Standing a second too long at the bedroom door before she returned to the guest room. I noticed every move. Not because I cared, but because they were so transparent it almost embarrassed me for her. She started to talk about him indirectly. Dropped phrases like, "People make mistakes," or "Sometimes you think you're ready for something you're not." I didn't bite. She pushed harder. Said things like, "I just don't think people understand how complicated things can get." I didn't argue. I didn't say anything at all. And that silence ate at her more than any rage could have. When a person's power comes from performance, indifference becomes the ultimate mirror. She tried to create tension, to trigger something that would let her play victim. But I gave her nothing. My calm was armor. So she shifted again. She tried p*nizing guilt. One night, she asked if I'd be okay if she went away for a weekend. "I need space," she said, like that wasn't all she'd already been taking. I told her, "You don't need my permission." Her eyes flickered. She wasn't used to me giving her rope. She left Friday morning. I didn't ask where she was going. I didn't check her phone. I didn't wait up. Instead, I made plans. Grabbed drinks with Ben. Caught a late movie by myself. Actually laughed, when someone at the bar told a joke that didn't feel forced. The next morning, I cleaned the house. Put on music I liked. I even danced a little in the kitchen while making coffee. That was the morning I realized the air inside the house felt lighter when she wasn't in it. When she returned Sunday afternoon, she looked at me like she expected a fight. Instead, she found me sitting on the back patio, reading. She asked, "Did you miss me?" I turned a page. "Didn't notice you were gone." That one landed. Her shoulders dropped and she walked past me without a word. That night, she didn't sleep in the guest room. She slept in the bedroom again. Not beside me. Just near me. I heard her breathing shift after midnight. That ragged, uneven rhythm that only comes from someone silently crying and hoping no one notices. But I didn't reach out. She'd spent months replacing closeness with secrets. Now she was learning how cold that silence really felt. The next week, she tried to initiate S***X. It wasn't subtle. She wore a silk slip she hadn't touched in years and stood in the doorway, silhouetted by hallway light. I looked up from the book I was reading. She walked over, slowly, deliberately, and sat on the edge of the bed. "You used to look at me," she whispered. "I used to believe you," I replied. She closed her eyes, turned away, stood back up, didn't say another word. She slept on the couch that night, and most nights after that. She started slipping, leaving behind things she used to conceal. A text preview from someone named M. An Uber notification at midnight. A second Instagram account I hadn't seen before, one where she posted filtered photos of dinners I wasn't invited to and captions like, "Healing isn't linear." Her control was eroding. She got clumsy with lies, forgot which story she'd told the week before. She started snapping at small things. "Why are you always so cold? Why don't you ever look at me? What do you want from me?" And I'd answer the same every time. "Nothing." Because that's what she'd left me with. Nothing. One night, she screamed. I had just walked in the door after an evening jog, earbuds still in. She was standing in the kitchen, arms crossed, jaw clenched. "This isn't sustainable," she said. I pulled the earbuds out. "What isn't?" "Whatever this is," she spat, gesturing between us. "You can't just ghost your own wife. You're not acting like one." That shut her down. For a second, she stepped forward. "So that's it? You're just done?" "No," I said quietly. "I was done the night I watched you kiss someone else on our porch." Her face went still. Finally, there it was. The truth she thought I hadn't seen. She opened her mouth, but no words came. So I walked past her, went into the studio, closed the door, let the silence have its say. She never tried that confrontation again. After that, her attempts grew half-hearted. Dinner plates left untouched. Apologies mumbled like background noise. Half laughs at things I didn't find funny anymore. She was unraveling, and I wasn't doing a thing to stop it. Because healing doesn't always look like tears and therapy and heartfelt talks. Sometimes it looks like walking away without making a sound. Sometimes it looks like building a life out of the pieces they never thought you'd pick back up. And as she scrambled to piece together a version of us she could still control, I had already moved on. Not to someone else, but to someone I'd forgotten. Myself. The house grew quieter, but not in a way that hurt. It was the kind of silence that settles in after a storm, the kind you welcome because you've earned it. Julia had stopped performing. Or maybe she just didn't know how anymore. Her movements became robotic, her presence weightless. She floated through the rooms like a guest unsure of how long they were staying. She used to ask me what I needed. Now she didn't ask anything at all. And I didn't mind. My studio had become my real home. The garage that once stored boxes now held new projects, tables, shelves, even a chair I planned to give my brother. I started posting my progress online. A few people reached out asking if I took commissions. I said I might. For the first time in years, I was building something that wasn't for her. The mornings were mine again. I got up early, drank my coffee slowly. Went for walks without telling anyone where I was headed. I didn't know updates anymore. I didn't know anything. Julia tried to follow my rhythm for a while. She started running again, even asked if we could go together. I told her I run alone. She nodded, lips pressed into a line, and never brought it up again. Even the dog, hers, technically started sleeping outside my door. Like it knew what was real and what was pretend. Some nights I'd hear her crying in the guest room. But I didn't check on her. I wasn't cruel, I was simply done being her caretaker. She had built her house of cards and I wasn't going to hold it up for her anymore. She tried to start conversations sometimes. "Do you ever think about when we first met? Do you remember the road trip to Montana? Do you think we could ever get back to that?" I answered with shrugs or silence or a soft "that was a long time ago." Because it was. And the man she'd built a life with back then? He didn't live here anymore. The hardest part wasn't letting her go. It was realizing how long I had stayed after she had. And the longer I stayed quiet, the more she unraveled. She didn't understand that I hadn't just pulled away from her. I'd reclaimed something she thought she still had a grip on. Me. 2 weeks after everything fully cracked, she told me she was going out of town. "A weekend trip," she said. "Need to clear my head," she added, like that hadn't become her default excuse. I said okay without even looking up from my book. That Friday, she packed with less effort than usual. No makeup bag, no carefully chosen outfits. Maybe she thought it didn't matter anymore. Maybe she knew this was a goodbye in disguise. She left in the morning. By early afternoon, I was outside tending the small garden I'd started behind the studio, a simple thing, just a few herbs and succulents. I didn't even hear the car pull up, but I noticed when Julia walked back into the yard. She wasn't supposed to be home, and her expression told me she hadn't planned to be. She froze when she saw me talking with someone, a woman from the gym I'd recently joined. Her name was Melanie. We weren't close. We were just talking about a workshop she was organizing, something light and normal and harmless. But Julia didn't see normal. She saw the one thing she never expected. Me. Relaxed. Smiling. At ease with someone who wasn't her. I watched her face shift shock, then confusion, then something closer to panic. She opened her mouth like she might say something, but nothing came out. Melanie turned, noticed the look, and politely excused herself. Julia stood there, arms crossed tightly, as if the breeze had betrayed her. I forgot something, she mumbled, her voice unsteady. You want me to grab it? I offered, voice calm. She shook her head. No. I'll get it. I nodded. Suit yourself. She walked inside. And didn't come back out for nearly an hour. That night, for the first time, she didn't close the door to the guest room. She left it ajar as if she wanted me to come ask her what was wrong. I didn't. Because by then we both knew I wasn't waiting for her to choose me. I had already chosen peace. And that decision wasn't up for negotiation.